Commander Vexthor of the Zalaxian Expeditionary Force stood at the bridge of his flagship, the Stellar Dominance, as it approached the edges of the Sol system. His mandibles clicked with anticipation while studying the holographic display of their target, Earth. The third planet of this unremarkable yellow star had become infamous throughout the galaxy, but not for any obvious reason. It was the mystery that surrounded it. Status report. Vexthor commanded, his crystalline eyes reflecting the blue glow of the tactical displays. First Officer Karazin stepped forward, her exoskeletal armor gleaming under the bridge lights. All systems nominal, Commander. The fleet is maintaining formation, and our stealth systems are operating at peak efficiency. Vexthor nodded slowly. The Xylaxian Empire had sent 3 previous expeditions to this sector. None had returned. The official reports listed them as missing in action, but the rumors that circulated through the Empire's military channels told a different story. Tales of ships vanishing without a trace, of weapons that struck from impossible distances, and of an enemy that couldn't be detected by any known means. Launch the probe network, Vexthor ordered. I want a full spectrum analysis of the entire system before we proceed further. Dozens of autonomous probes shot out from the fleet's vessels, their sophisticated sensors designed to detect everything from quantum fluctuations to gravitational anomalies. The Xylaxians had learned from their predecessors' mistakes, or at least what little they could piece together from the fragments of data that had made it back to Empire space. Probes deployed and functioning normally, reported the sensor officer. Initial readings show no unusual activity within range. Vexthor's antenna twitched skeptically. Maintain distance and continue monitoring. I want to know the moment anything seems out of the ordinary. Hours passed as the fleet held position at the system's edge. The probe network expanded, creating an intricate web of surveillance that should have detected even the smallest spacefaring vessel. Yet they found nothing but normal astronomical phenomena. Commander, Karazin spoke up, her voice carrying a note of confusion. We've lost contact with Probe Cluster 7. Vexthor's carapace tensed. Cause? Unknown, sir. One moment they were transmitting normally, the next, nothing. No distress signal, no debris field, just silence. Before Vexthor could respond, another officer called out, Sir, Cluster 3 and 9 have also gone dark. Battle stations, Vexthor commanded, his voice steady despite the growing unease in his thorax. Power up weapon systems and raise shields. Prepare for. A brilliant flash of light erupted in space before them, momentarily blinding their optical sensors. When the glare faded, 3 Xylaxian destroyers had vanished from their formation. Multiple hull breaches detected throughout the fleet. Karazin shouted, We're being hit by something. Sensors can't lock onto the source. Vexthor watched in horror as more of his ships began taking damage from invisible attackers. Energy readings spiked across his tactical display, but they seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Evasive maneuvers. Return fire on any suspected source locations. The Xylaxian fleet broke formation, their ships executing complex defensive patterns while firing salvos of plasma torpedoes into empty space. But their attackers remained frustratingly elusive. Commander, the communications officer called out, We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Put it through, Vexthor ordered, his mandibles clenched tight. A human face appeared on the main view screen. The alien creature appeared calm, almost apologetic. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered restricted space. Stand down immediately, or we will be forced to continue defensive actions. Vexthor's antenna quivered with indignation. This is Commander Vexthor of the Xylaxian Empire. We demand you show yourselves and engage in honorable combat. The human's expression didn't change. Commander, we are already engaged in combat. The fact that you cannot see us is precisely the point. This is your final warning. Another explosion rocked the Stellar Dominance. Shields at 40%. Karazin reported. We've lost contact with the entire starboard wing of the fleet. Vex Thor's mind raced. The stories were true. Earth's defenders wielded technology far beyond what the Empire had believed possible. They weren't just cloaking their ships, they were somehow bending the very fabric of space-time to hide their presence. All vessels, execute Emergency Protocol Omega, Vex Thor commanded. Prepare for immediate withdrawal. Sir, Karazin protested, the Empire expects us to. The Empire expects us to succeed. Vex Thor cut her off. We cannot succeed if we're dead, and I intend to return with information about what we're truly facing here. As the remaining ships of the fleet began their retreat, the human admiral spoke again. A wise decision, Commander. Please inform your superiors that Earth's space is permanently closed to military vessels. Any future incursions will be met with similar resistance. The transmission cut off, leaving Vex Thor to watch as his battered fleet limped away from the Sol system. Of the 30 ships that had arrived, only 12 remained operational. The others were either destroyed or disabled, floating helplessly in space. Plot a course back to Empire space, Vex Thor ordered, and prepare a full report for High Command. They need to understand what we're dealing with here. As the stellar dominance jumped to faster-than-light travel, Vex Thor reflected on what they'd encountered. The humans hadn't just developed superior technology. They'd fundamentally changed the rules of space warfare. They'd turned their entire solar system into an invisible fortress, protected by weapons and defenses that operated beyond the comprehension of their would-be invaders. For the first time in his military career, Vex Thor felt something approaching respect for a potential enemy. The humans had earned their reputation, not through brute force or overwhelming numbers, but through ingenuity and tactical brilliance. They had turned their apparent weakness, their isolation in a single star system, into an impregnable stronghold. The galaxy would need to reassess its understanding of humanity. They weren't just another spacefaring species to be conquered or subjugated. They were something else entirely. A race that had mastered the art of defensive warfare to such a degree that even the mighty Zalaxian Empire would think twice before challenging them again. As his ship carried him back to familiar space, Vex Thor made a mental note to recommend a complete overhaul of the Empire's approach to Earth. Some enemies, he realized, were best left alone, and some mysteries were better left unsolved. High Admiral Zira of the Zalaxian Strategic Command felt her crystalline exoskeleton bristle as she reviewed Commander Vex Thor's report for the third time. The holoprojector displayed detailed scans of the encounter, showing ships disappearing into void without any trace of conventional weapons fire. Her private chamber aboard the Imperial Command Station hummed with the low frequency of data processors analyzing every fragment of information from the failed expedition. Impossible, she muttered, her mandibles clicking rapidly. No species could have developed cloaking technology this advanced without our intelligence networks detecting it. The door chimed, and her aide entered with another data crystal. High Admiral, we've completed the analysis of the stellar dominance's sensor logs. You'll want to see this immediately. The new data crystallized into a three-dimensional representation of the battle. This time, the computers had isolated subtle gravitational distortions that the fleet's sensors had initially missed. The pattern was unlike anything in the Empire's vast military database. They're not just hiding their ships, Zyra realized, her compound eyes widening. They're bending space itself around them. She immediately called an emergency meeting of the Strategic Command. Within hours, the Empire's top military minds were gathered in the station's secure conference chamber, their exoskeletons reflecting the harsh light of the tactical displays. Our understanding of human technological capabilities has been severely underestimated, Zyra began, her voice carrying the weight of her revelation. They've developed a method of spatial manipulation that renders traditional detection methods useless. The assembled commanders chittered nervously as she played back the enhanced battle footage. The gravitational distortions appeared as ripples in the fabric of space, moving with precise coordination to strike at the Zalaxian fleet's weakest points. But surely their power requirements must be enormous, argued Commander Kexlar, his antennae twitching skeptically. No planetary civilization could generate enough energy to maintain such technology across an entire star system. Zira activated another display, showing energy readings from the Sol system's outer boundary. That's what makes this even more remarkable. Look at these readings. They're using minimal power. Whatever method they've developed, it's incredibly efficient. The implications were staggering. The humans hadn't just developed better cloaking technology. They'd discovered fundamental principles of physics that the Empire's greatest scientists hadn't even theorized. It was a humbling revelation for a civilization that had prided itself on its technological superiority. There's more, Zyra continued, bringing up a new set of data. Analysis of their attack patterns suggests this isn't just about technology. They've developed entirely new tactical doctrines to complement their capabilities. The display showed how the human ships had moved in perfect coordination, creating overlapping fields of invisible fire that left no escape routes. It was beautiful in its lethal efficiency. "They don't think like us," she explained. "We build bigger ships, more powerful weapons, stronger shields. They've taken a completely different approach. Instead of trying to overcome the limitations of space combat, they found ways to work within them, to turn them to their advantage." One of the younger commanders raised a limb. "Could we not develop countermeasures? Perhaps if we modified our sensor arrays to detect these spatial distortions." Zyra shook her head. "By the time we detected them, it would be too late. Their attacks are precisely calculated. Every shot is designed to disable or destroy key systems before we can even register their presence." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The Xylaxian Empire, with all its might and technological prowess, had encountered a force it couldn't simply overwhelm with superior firepower. "What do you recommend, High Admiral?" asked the most senior commander present, his age evident in the worn patterns of his exoskeleton. Zyra took a moment to compose her thoughts. "We need to completely reassess our approach to Earth. They're not just another primitive species waiting to be conquered. They've developed their defensive capabilities to such a degree that any conventional military action against them would be futile." She brought up a final display, showing the locations of all failed expeditions to the Sol system. "Look at the pattern. They've never pursued our forces beyond their system's boundaries. They've never launched retaliatory strikes against our territories. They're not interested in expansion or conquest. They simply want to be left alone. And they've developed the perfect means to ensure that happens," someone muttered. "Exactly," Zyra agreed. "They've created what might be the most effective defensive system in known space. A ghost fleet that can strike without warning, neutralize any threat, and vanish without a trace." The meeting concluded with a unanimous recommendation. The Sol system would be designated as a restricted zone, too costly to attack and too dangerous to study. The Empire would need to accept that some mysteries were better left unexplored. As the other commanders filed out, Zyra remained at her station, studying the battle footage one last time. She couldn't help but admire the elegance of the human solution. They had taken their greatest weakness, their confinement to a single star system, and turned it into an impenetrable fortress. "Perhaps," she mused to herself, "we have something to learn from them after all." Captain Miratax had never expected to see the inside of a human facility. As one of the few survivors from the disabled Xylaxian vessel, Silent Strike, she now found herself in what the humans called a diplomatic observation center on their lunar base. The room's stark white walls contrasted sharply with the black expanse of space visible through a vast observation window. "Your accommodations are comfortable, I trust?" asked Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the human scientist assigned to interact with her. The human's dark eyes held a mixture of curiosity and caution. Miratax's antennae twitched slightly. "You treat your prisoners well," she admitted, "though I fail to understand why you're showing me any of this." Elena smiled. "You're not our prisoner, Captain. You're our guest, and what we're about to show you is a gesture of good faith." She gestured toward the window. "Watch." The vast lunar landscape before them suddenly shimmered, like heat waves rising from desert sand. Where there had been nothing but crater-marked regolith, a massive structure began to materialize. Miratax's compound eyes widened as she realized she was looking at a sprawling military installation that must have been there all along. "Quantum camouflage," Alina explained. "The entire facility exists in a state of quantum superposition, effectively invisible, until we choose to reveal it. But that's just the beginning." A series of sleek vessels emerged from the facility's hangars, their hulls seeming to bend the very light around them. They moved with an impossible grace, their propulsion systems leaving no visible exhaust or energy signature. "Your ghost fleet," Miratax breathed, her military training automatically analyzing their capabilities. "But how do you power such technology? The energy requirements should be astronomical." Elena led her to a holographic display station. "That's where you're wrong. We don't fight against physics. We work with it." The display showed a complex network of quantum entanglement patterns. "We discovered that space itself has properties we can manipulate with surprisingly little energy input. Think of it like folding paper instead of cutting through it." The human scientist brought up another display, this one showing the defensive network that protected Earth. "We learned long ago that trying to match other civilizations, ship for ship, weapon for weapon, was futile. We couldn't compete with vast empires in terms of raw industrial output or fleet size. So we took a different approach." Miratax watched as the display demonstrated how Earth's defensive systems worked in concert. Each vessel, each weapons platform, each sensor array was part of a vast interconnected web. They didn't just share data. They shared quantum states, allowing them to coordinate their actions with perfect precision. "Your entire system is a single unified defense network," she realized. "Every component aware of and working with every other component instantaneously." "Exactly," Alina confirmed. "We turned our solar system into one integrated defensive organism. Traditional military doctrine focuses on overwhelming force. We focused on perfect coordination and efficiency." A new series of images appeared, showing the development of human technology over the centuries. "We had to innovate to survive," Alina continued. "When we realized we weren't alone in the universe, we knew we couldn't match the industrial capacity of galactic empires. But we could change the rules of engagement." Miratax found herself nodding. "You made it impossible to fight you conventionally. Any attacking force would be struck from all directions simultaneously, unable to effectively target your ships or predict your movements. And we did it all with a fraction of the energy expenditure that traditional space combat requires," Alina added. "No massive power plants, no enormous shield generators, just precise application of fundamental universal principles." The human led her to another section of the facility, where engineers were working on what appeared to be a new type of vessel. Its hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, adapting its structure in real time. "This is why we're showing you all this," Alina explained. "Your empire needs to understand that continuing to test our defenses is pointless. We don't want war. We don't want conquest. We simply want to be left in peace to continue our research and development." Miratax's antennae drooped slightly. "The Empire doesn't take kindly to being told what it can and cannot do." "Then perhaps it needs to learn," Alina replied firmly. "We're showing you this so you can report back with certainty. Earth is not a prize to be won or a territory to be conquered. We are a civilization that has chosen to dedicate ourselves to understanding and manipulating the fundamental forces of the universe itself." A group of small drones zipped past them, their movements perfectly synchronized as they carried out maintenance tasks. Miratax noticed how they seemed to anticipate each other's actions, moving through shared space without the slightest risk of collision. "Your technology," she said slowly, "it's not just about defense, is it? This level of coordination, of understanding. You're pushing the boundaries of what's possible." Elena's expression softened. "That's what we've been trying to tell every expedition that arrives in our system. We're not interested in military dominance or territorial expansion. We're interested in discovery, in understanding, in pushing the limits of science and technology." The human gestured to the vast facility around them. "All of this, our entire defensive network, exists for one purpose: to give us the security and freedom to pursue that understanding. Every attack, every attempted invasion, just distracts us from our true goals." Miratax felt a profound shift in her understanding. The humans weren't just defending their territory. They were protecting their way of life, their pursuit of knowledge. Their technological superiority wasn't about military might. It was a byproduct of their relentless drive to understand the universe around them. Supreme Commander Kazthar stood before the assembled might of the Xylaxian Empire's Grand Armada. 300 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled, filled the viewport of his command dreadnought. Their mission was simple: break Earth's defensive network and prove that no power in the galaxy could resist the Empire's will. "The humans have relied on trickery and deception for too long," he announced to his fleet commanders. "Today, we will demonstrate that true military might cannot be overcome by mere technological sleight of hand." Despite the warnings from Captain Miratax and the analysis from Strategic Command, the Empire's leadership had decided that Earth's defiance could not go unchallenged. They had spent months developing what they believed were countermeasures to human quantum technology. The fleet moved through hyperspace with devastating purpose, emerging at the edge of the Sol system in perfect attack formation. Hundreds of ships, their weapons primed, and their new sensor arrays supposedly capable of detecting Earth's ghost fleet. "Launch the first wave," Kazthar commanded. "Let us see how their parlor tricks fare against overwhelming force." 100 ships surged forward, their enhanced sensors prodding the space ahead. For several minutes, nothing happened. No invisible attacks, no quantum distortions, no sign of Earth's defensive network. Kazthar's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. "You see, their technology is useless against proper preparation. They hide because they cannot." His words died in his throat as space itself seemed to fold inward, not around his ships, but between them. Corridors of twisted spacetime appeared throughout his formation, cutting his fleet into isolated segments. "Impossible," he roared. "Where are their ships? Our sensors detect nothing." "Sir," his tactical officer's voice trembled, "we're reading massive gravitational distortions. They're not using ships at all. They're manipulating the fabric of space directly." The human response, when it came, was transmitted on all frequencies. "This is Earth Defense Command. You were warned. You were shown. You chose not to listen. Now you will understand." What followed was unlike any battle in the history of the Empire. Earth's defenders didn't engage the Xylaxian fleet directly. They simply rewrote the laws of physics around them. Ships found themselves unable to maintain formation as space itself became fluid and unpredictable. Weapon fire disappeared into spatial folds, emerging light years away. Communications were twisted and distorted, making coordinated action impossible. Some vessels discovered that time itself moved differently in their section of space, leaving them fighting battles that had ended minutes ago. "Full retreat," Kazthar ordered, but it was too late. The spatial distortions had transformed the battlefield into a maze of twisted reality. Ships trying to flee found themselves moving in circles, their navigation systems unable to cope with the fundamentally altered nature of space around them. From his command ship, Kazthar watched helplessly as his mighty armada was systematically dismantled, not through violence or destruction, but through the precise application of physical laws he barely understood. Ships were disabled, their systems crashed by quantum interference. Others found themselves gently, but firmly pushed out of the system by waves of gravitational force. "Sir," his second-in-command reported, "we've lost contact with 70% of the fleet. The remaining vessels report critical system failures across all categories. We cannot fight an enemy that controls space itself." The human's next transmission carried a note of weary patience. "Your ships are disabled, but your crews are unharmed. We have transmitted coordinates for safe zones where space remains normal. Move your vessels to these locations and prepare to receive boarding parties. This battle is over. Kasthar's pride warred with his duty to protect his remaining crews. The Empire had committed its greatest fleet to this attack, and in less than an hour, it had been rendered completely ineffective without a single human ship firing a conventional weapon. How? He demanded over the communication channel. How is this possible? The response came from a familiar voice, Captain Miratax. They tried to tell us, Commander. They tried to show us. Earth doesn't need a giant fleet or superweapons. They've learned to speak the language of the universe itself, and it answers when they call. As human vessels finally materialized around his crippled fleet, Kasthar understood the true magnitude of his error. The Empire had assumed that humanity's defensive capabilities were a form of advanced technology that could be countered or overcome. Instead, they were expressions of a fundamental understanding of reality that the Zalaxians had not even begun to grasp. The boarding parties that arrived were not soldiers, but scientists and engineers, carrying diagnostic equipment rather than weapons. They moved through the disabled ships with practiced efficiency, ensuring systems were stabilized and crews were safe. Your vessels will be restored to functional status, the humans informed them, but your weapons and advanced drive systems will remain offline. You will be escorted to the edge of the system and allowed to return home. The Empire must understand. This is not a war you can win because we are not fighting in any way you understand. As Kasthar watched his mighty armada being calmly and methodically neutralized, he realized that humanity had not just defeated them. They had rendered the very concept of military conquest obsolete. How do you fight an enemy that can rewrite the rules of reality itself? 1 year after the failed invasion of Earth, the Great Hall of the Zalaxian Imperial Palace hosted an unprecedented gathering. Representatives from Earth stood before the Imperial Council, their presence marking the first time any human had set foot in the Empire's seat of power. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, now Earth's chief diplomatic liaison, faced the assembled Zalaxian leadership. Beside her stood Captain Miratax, whose detailed reports of human capabilities had finally convinced the Empire to pursue a different path. The battle for Earth was never truly a battle, Elena began, her voice carrying through the vast chamber. It was a demonstration of why the old ways of thinking about power and conquest must change. The Imperial Council shifted uncomfortably on their crystalline thrones. The loss of their Grand Armada had shaken the Empire to its core, forcing them to confront the limitations of their understanding. We didn't just defeat your fleet, Elena continued, activating a holographic display. We showed you a glimpse of what's possible when you stop trying to dominate the universe and start trying to understand it. The hologram showed a three-dimensional model of space-time, with intricate quantum relationships mapped across its surface. This is how we see reality, not as a battlefield to be conquered, but as a canvas of infinite possibility. Every discovery we make reveals new layers of complexity, new ways to work in harmony with the fundamental forces of existence. High Admiral Zira, who had warned against the invasion, stepped forward. You could have destroyed our fleet completely. Why show such restraint? Elena smiled. Because destruction was never our goal. Earth's defensive network wasn't built to wage war. It was built to prevent it. To give us the security to pursue knowledge without fear of interruption. The display shifted, showing the vast network of research facilities that humanity had constructed throughout their solar system. We invite the Empire to join us in this pursuit. Instead of sending warships, send scientists. Instead of seeking conquest, seek understanding. A murmur ran through the assembled Zalaxian leadership. This was not the usual aftermath of a military defeat. There were no demands for reparations, no territorial concessions, no punitive measures. You offer cooperation? Asked the Imperial Chancellor, his ancient carapace gleaming in the chamber's light. After all our attempts to conquer your world, we offer something more valuable. Elena replied. We offer a new perspective. The universe is vast beyond comprehension, filled with mysteries we've barely begun to unravel. Imagine what we could discover together. Captain Miratax stepped forward, her time among humans having given her insights that few in the Empire possessed. Our species have different strengths. The Empire's industrial capacity, our understanding of large-scale engineering, combined with human insights into quantum mechanics and spatial manipulation, we could achieve things neither of us could manage alone. The holographic display expanded, showing theoretical projects that could be undertaken through cooperation, research stations that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously, vessels that could navigate the boundaries between dimensions, technologies that would make their current capabilities seem primitive by comparison. This is what we've been trying to protect, Elena explained. Not just our territory, but our ability to push the boundaries of what's possible. Every time we had to focus on defense, it took resources away from exploration and discovery. The Imperial Chancellor was quiet for a long moment. You have given us much to consider. Our empire has always equated power with military might, with the ability to conquer and control. You have shown us that there are other forms of power, perhaps more significant ones. The universe itself is our greatest ally, Elena agreed. Learn to work with it rather than trying to dominate it, and anything becomes possible. Over the next several hours, the foundations were laid for a new relationship between Earth and the Xylaxian Empire. Research exchanges were proposed, joint projects planned, and barriers of mistrust began to crumble. As the meeting concluded, Dr. Rodriguez stood at a viewport, watching the crystalline spires of the imperial capital gleaming in the light of alien stars. Captain Miratax joined her. "Your people have changed everything," the Xylaxian officer observed. "Not through force, but through understanding." Elena nodded. "That's always been humanity's greatest strength. Not our technology or our defensive capabilities, but our drive to understand, to explore, to push beyond what seems possible." "And now?" Miratax asked. "What happens now?" "Now," Elena replied, watching as the first joint human-Xylaxian research vessel prepared for launch in the distance. "We show the galaxy what's possible when we stop fighting against the universe and start working with it. The real exploration is just beginning." In the years that followed, the partnership between Earth and the Xylaxian Empire would reshape the understanding of science and technology throughout known space. Their combined knowledge would unlock secrets that neither civilization could have discovered alone, proving that the greatest power lies not in the ability to destroy, but in the courage to understand. The mysterious defenses of Earth remained active, a reminder of humanity's unique approach to survival. But they were no longer seen as weapons of war. Instead, they became symbols of a civilization that had chosen to defend its right to explore, to learn, and to grow. In the end, humanity's greatest victory wasn't in defeating an empire, but in showing it a better path forward.